It's what Oprah Winfrey wants her legacy to be. But guess what? It's not.
What?
It's not Mrs. O.
Ooh.
Because you were snookered by the biggest liars in history. And you're now trying to backtrack on those lies because you know that your reputation was shot the moment that you allowed Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to try and bring down the British royal family with a tissue of untruths.
I tried so hard.
First, she reveals the interview. She hit back at suggestions that the couple didn't know what they were going to be asked. She then admitted that she had told Prince Harry and Meghan that this was all about a win-win. This is gonna be good for you guys, and it's gonna be good for me. So they sat down to film for the 3.5 hours, and Oprah thought that her career legacy was set. Instead, as we'll soon see, she's now desperately trying to explain why she encouraged Meghan Markle's lies rather than challenged them.
Everyone remembers that interview as a brave princess opening up to a trusted friend. But according to the way some viewers now talk about it, it may have been something very different. Two highly strategic women in a rented California garden, each getting exactly what they needed from the moment. And this week, 5 years later, that messy little setup is starting to unravel in public. Watching it fall apart has clearly caught the internet's attention.
They didn't know, obviously, anything that I was going to ask them, but I had said to them ahead of time, I'm going to try to cover everything. This interview took 3.5 hours. And as is always the case for me, I was just trying to carefully go through everything that had come up in the past.
No, you weren't. You were just admitting that you wanted it to be a win. You weren't talking about it being a win for truth or a win for journalism or a win for the British royal family. You were talking about it being a win for Harry and Meghan and for you.
Here's the arrangement they seem to strike, even if neither of them would ever call it that outright. According to the way some online commentators frame it, Meghan Markle needed her public image cleaned up, and there was no bigger media heavyweight in America than Oprah Winfrey. At the same time, people have long said Oprah wanted a royal connection, something she had been chasing for years, so the two of them sat in that garden and, at least in the eyes of viewers looking back now, each gave the other exactly what they needed from the moment.
Trash Panda asking, why do you think she's bringing this all up now? Stephanie Sidley replies, because Harry and Meghan are backpedaling on the racism claims. But the royal grift ain't happy. Maybe I should post the full unedited interview on X so we don't have a rewriting of history. Fuck you, Oprah. You knew what you were doing with this script.
Meghan got the sympathy-driven story she seemed to need. Oprah pulled in her massive 49 million viewer audience. And, according to critics online, the British royal family, after opening their doors to her, ended up taking the hit for both of them. Take away the tears, and some viewers have long argued it looked more like a business arrangement dressed up as a heartfelt confession. That is why the reaction now feels bigger than just one interview. Once people start looking at it through that lens, every pause, every question, and every emotional beat gets pulled back into the discussion, and the whole thing starts to look a lot less spontaneous. Some online commentators say that is exactly what made the moment so powerful at the time, because it gave viewers a polished story they could feel, while leaving the deeper strategy hidden in plain sight. Now, with the conversation picking back up years later, critics are revisiting the same scenes and asking whether the public was ever meant to see the full picture. Supporters would obviously push back on that reading, and no official confirmation has ever backed up the more suspicious takes. Still, the fact that people are arguing about it again says a lot about how carefully that image was built, and how quickly internet opinion can turn when the same story gets viewed with fresh eyes.
She falls in love with the prince, and because of that, she has to lose her voice. But by the end, she gets her voice back.
I get another lecture from you, I'm gonna go crazy.
Two women who have spent much of their lives carefully shaping how the public sees them, then seemingly choosing to shape that image together for one very profitable afternoon. Now the backlash is landing, and both women are, at least in online discussions, trying very quietly to distance themselves from the whole thing.
And this is in regards to, and you know it's what went viral, you know it's what went around the world. Were you silence or silenced? And Oprah is now trying to make this extraordinary argument. And I mean, I say extraordinary in the sense that it's totally not believable that this action was designed to push Meghan Markle into whether she was actually telling the truth. You've done this job for a very long time. You don't do that. What you say is you say, oh, wow, Meghan, who told you couldn't speak? We need the names. We've got to call these people out. When did they say that? Who are you referring to? Are you sure? You know, the courtiers say they offered to help you and give you whatever you needed. But she didn't do that, did she? She made one movement, finger to her mouth, and she now claims that that gives her some type of journalistic integrity. I don't think so, Opes.
Meghan has been appearing on MasterChef Australia, presenting herself as a warm, family-first home cook, while Oprah, in a recent Vanity Fair sit-down, was shown that widely discussed moment again and visibly shifted in her seat, brushing it off as if it were just a small misunderstanding from years ago. But some viewers are not buying that performance for a second.
I was silent.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
The latter.
Okay.
She's
Very
embarrassed.
nice. I don't think I've done it since. I don't know where the hell that came from. Whoop. Okay. And I wanted to be clear. Was she silenced? Were people telling her not to talk? That's why I said that. I said it for clarification because I didn't want later to hear, well, no, it wasn't that. It really was that I was silenced. They wouldn't let me talk. So it was all for clarification.
Bullshit, Oprah. You've literally just said what you should have asked. Were people telling her not to talk? You didn't ask that. You played into a lie. And as a result, your legacy is now trashed, and you know it.
This is not, at least in the eyes of critics online, a woman suddenly finding her conscience. It looks more like someone trying to protect Oprah. The version of events these two sold to the public is starting to fall apart, and neither of them seems eager to be standing beside it when it all comes crashing down. So tonight, we're doing what tabloids usually avoid. We're putting both of them under the spotlight. And according to the harsher online commentary, they may have been a perfect match for the image they wanted to build. And that is why the conversation is still spreading. Once a public image starts looking staged, even small details begin to matter, and people online start picking apart every choice, every reaction, and every carefully placed word. What used to feel like a simple celebrity conversation now gets treated more like a case study in image control, and that shift is exactly what has kept the debate alive. The more viewers revisit it, the more they say the polished surface is hard to ignore. Some critics argue that the warmth, the timing, and the emotional framing all work together in a way that felt too convenient, while others insist people are reading far too much into a moment that was always meant to be public-facing. Either way, the renewed attention shows how fast a once-celebrated story can turn when the audience decides to look at it differently.
They play her this old clip from 2021 where basically during the pandemic, when people are locked in their homes, they're struggling to pay their bills, their businesses have been shut down, Oprah, Meghan Markle, and Prince Harry sat around in a massive mansion, I believe owned by Rob Lowe, and complained about how hard their lives were. Now, this is when Meghan Markle stopped being relatable to anybody. People are locked in their homes. People are dying. Their family members are on life support, right, on incubators, and she's sitting there complaining how hard it was for her to live in a palace and be in the royal family eating crumpets and scones. And Oprah realized after that interview, in my opinion, because of all the reporting and all the lies that were debunked, Oprah realized she was used. Meghan Markle is a con artist, and she used Oprah Winfrey to launder her image.
Let's start with Saint Oprah, because that halo, according to critics online, could use a little polish. The fairy tale version was that Oprah did the interview out of friendship and principle, but plenty of viewers have pushed back on that idea, saying it looked far more calculated than sentimental. Some online commentary even claimed Oprah had spent years trying to land a major royal conversation, and that the TV world knew exactly how long that ambition had been circling. From that angle, this was never really about Meghan. Meghan, in that reading, was simply the one who finally agreed.
She was gunning for this interview. She started poaching Harry and Meghan about a sit-down 6 months before they were wed. She was desperate to sit down with Princess Diana, kissing her butt, sitting across from her at Kensington Palace, trying to get Diana to give her an exclusive. Diana lovingly wrote her a note that was like, no way.
And here is the part that, according to online commentary, says a lot about both women. Long before Meghan ever entered the picture, Oprah was said to have wanted Diana, the real one, the people's princess, the biggest interview on the planet. Some viewers say she went after it hard, but Diana, may she rest in peace, was widely seen as too sharp to be pulled into it. According to that version of events, she sent Oprah a polite no and kept her dignity completely intact.
You know, wanted to sit down with the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Catherine, and they said, absolutely no way, that's beneath us. She got Fergie, which is convenient because I think Harry and Meghan are on the Fergie level. But this was a huge win for Oprah Winfrey, who'd been chasing legitimate members of the British royal family for an interview for decades.
Yeah. According to online commentary, Oprah later tried again with William and Catherine, and the answer was reportedly the same, a polite door closing just as firmly. Viewers who defend that interpretation say the senior royals could spot the spectacle coming from a mile away, and that, to them, is the real clue. In that reading, the more traditional royal circle simply did not seem interested in handing over generations of image and privacy for a daytime television moment, especially one that critics say could have been sliced apart for ratings. And that is exactly why people are reading this whole situation so closely now. Once viewers start believing a moment was carefully managed, every small detail gets pulled back into the spotlight, and the story stops being about one interview alone. It turns into a bigger argument about access, image, and who benefited from the way that conversation was framed. That is also why the online debate keeps spreading. Some people see a polished media moment that was always built to look warm and personal, while others think the criticism is going too far and that the reaction is shaping the story more than the footage ever did. But either way, the conversation has moved well beyond simple admiration. It is now being treated like a test of trust, and that is what makes the renewed attention so sharp.
She knows what the repercussions were. Ultimately, Prince Philip dies weeks later, and we understand that he was devastated over this interview in hospital while it aired. And at the time, I remember some of the headlines that people from the Sussex camp were saying that because he was in hospital, they shouldn't have to hold this interview, that didn't affect them. The poor man dies weeks later. It devastated Queen Elizabeth, too. It made the last few years of her life very difficult to navigate. On top of the Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor saga, she had Harry and Meghan accusing her family of racism and bullying and not taking their mental health seriously.
It apparently took a very specific type of person to say yes to Oprah, someone with little to lose and a lot to gain from the exposure. So who ended up taking the risk? In the way critics online describe it, it was the royal figure some people believe was willing to trade family distance for a sympathy-driven special.
This interview was historic. It changed the course of royal history. It changed the course of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's lives. And those of us who knew at the time, like you did, that what Oprah Winfrey was actually allowing was lies to be broadcast around the world in an attempt to bring down the British royal family. At the time, we called her out. But she was surrounded, Tash, by so much noise and so much wokery and so many people patting her on the back and saying, oh, well done, you've just changed the royal family forever. What she didn't realize is that she hadn't done her job. But I think, Tash, as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been exposed on such a grand scale, such a lengthy period now, Oprah has had to backtrack. And I appreciate that I think she's embarrassed. I think she's deeply, deeply embarrassed, and she wants to change the legacy of this interview.
According to the harsher online takes, Meghan was not Oprah's close friend at all. She was cast as the consolation prize, the runner-up choice, the only royal figure willing to sit in that chair, a chance to polish an image and settle old resentment at the same time, with Oprah framed by critics as the easiest place to do it. And if you believe that reading, it says a lot about how bleak the moment looked for Oprah. After decades of circling the palace gates, the only member of the firm she managed to secure was the one the institution supposedly could not wait to move on from. Supporters of that view say this was never some huge scoop, just a woman reaching for the bottom of the royal barrel and presenting it like a win. Now, with the conversation turning sour, some people say she would rather the public forget she was ever connected to it.
The more you watched it, the more you thought, Oprah, come on, that's not true. Challenge that. Ask her. If she says there's racists in the royal family, who are they? You know, it was a remarkably uninquisitive interview, wasn't it?
Nothing's more compelling than watching a 40-year-old man complain that his allowance has been cut off.
By daddy.
I mean,
by daddy.
Daddy cut off his allowance at 40 years old. Daddy's no longer putting gas in the Range Rover. Daddy's no longer paying the phone bill. Oh gosh, my sympathies are with you, child.
Yeah.
But you know,
Heartbreaking.
And if you still believe that famous Oprah warmth is the real thing, the internet has spent the last couple of years picking that idea apart, piece by piece. According to the harsher online commentary, the empathy may have always been part of the performance. People point to the leaning in, the soft voice, and the familiar, and how did that make you feel line, as moments they say were designed less as compassion and more as a way to pull people open on camera while the tape kept rolling. Critics online have even described it as a pressure tactic, not a comforting conversation, especially for the people who came out looking the worst in that chair. And here is the part that matters most in this story. Online critics also argue that Oprah has always had control over the edit, deciding what stayed in and what got quietly removed, along with how each guest came across once the episode aired. When one person handles the questions and the final cut, some viewers say the guest was never really the one in control. You might have thought you were choosing the moment. According to that reading, you were not. That is why the backlash keeps landing so hard. Once people start questioning who really controlled the tone, the whole interview begins to feel less like a candid conversation and more like a carefully shaped piece of television. And for critics online, that difference changes everything. They are not just replaying the questions anymore, they are replaying the power dynamic behind them. Who was steering the mood, who was benefiting from the optics, and who was left carrying the fallout once the clip circulated online? Those are the questions driving the renewed debate, and they are exactly why this story has not faded the way some expected it to. To supporters, it may still look like a meaningful sit-down that people are reading too harshly in hindsight. But to the critics, every polished moment now feels loaded with intent, and every warm exchange gets treated like part of a larger strategy. That is the tension sitting at the center of all this, and it is keeping the conversation alive in a way nobody can really ignore.
Oprah Winfrey is so powerful that when she sat down with Vanity Fair to do this, she could have easily said, this one's off the table, this one's off limits, because it is so controversial and it's not a great reflection of her. If I were Oprah Winfrey, I would have been like, I don't want to revisit this one.
Then there is the pattern that people in Hollywood rarely say out loud. According to critics online, Oprah has a habit of building people up, benefiting from the moment, and then being conveniently far away once things start to turn messy. She helped turn Dr. Phil into a household name, then later backed Dr. Oz. She also publicly praised a so-called Brazilian faith healer who, as online commentary later claimed, turned out to be deeply troubling. And each time a scandal surfaced, there was Oprah again, according to the criticism, looking polished, sounding hurt, and already moving toward the exit. Is that telling? The accusation, and it is framed that way by her detractors, is that she always seems to be nearby when the spotlight is bright, but never the one left holding the blame when it all falls apart.
She thought Oprah Winfrey, who was beloved by Black women across the country, could come on camera and rehabilitate her and make her this victim. This is during Black Lives Matter. You guys have to remember what was going on in 2020 and 2021. She really tried to use Oprah, and Oprah Winfrey has not said anything positive about her since then.
And the sharpest criticism is the newest one, the idea that the whole saintly image, the schools, the charities, the tearful specials, is just a carefully worn costume used to get what she wants, and that the second the cameras stop rolling, the act supposedly stops too. When she faced backlash over her own conduct during the Maui fires, she did not exactly step back and own it. Instead, she went on television and, according to critics, cast herself as the real victim, saying she felt terrorized and vilified. To her detractors, that is the Oprah pattern in one sentence. No matter what the situation is, somehow she ends up as the one the audience is expected to sympathize with.
Oprah does not like being played. She is a rich, bitch, whether I agree with her politics or not, or I like her that much, she is a boss. And she realized after that interview, these two are playing me. They played me. She sat in my face and lied.
And some critics online argue that she has never really paid a meaningful price for any of it. Not for the healers, not for the miracle products that later looked questionable, and not for the powerful men she smiled beside who later became the subject of serious criticism. In that version of the story, every scandal that might have damaged a normal public figure seems to slide off Oprah and land somewhere else instead. She is not just on the show. For 50 years, she has controlled the show, the questions, the edit, and the ending. And when you are the one holding the scissors, some viewers say, you are rarely the one who gets cut. Even the giveaways were not as simple as they looked. That famous, you get a car moment, everyone remembers came with a catch, since the audience was later left dealing with the tax bill on those cars, and plenty of people could not cover it. To critics, that is Oprah in one line, the big, generous gesture on camera, while somebody else quietly handles the cost once the lights go down. So when people watch her pull back from Meghan now, they say not to mistake that for some sudden change of heart. According to that online criticism, this is just Oprah doing what she has always done, stepping out of the disaster before it splashes back on her. And that is exactly why the reaction keeps growing instead of fading. Once people start reading old moments through that lens, every polished smile, every soft question, and every perfectly timed reaction gets reinterpreted as part of a bigger strategy. What used to look warm and spontaneous now gets picked apart as something more calculated, and that shift changes the entire conversation. For supporters, this is still just hindsight doing too much. But for critics, the latest backlash feels like proof that the old image was always more fragile than it looked. They are not only talking about one interview anymore, they are talking about a broader pattern of influence, branding, and distance when the pressure builds. And because that debate sits on top of a public figure who has long been seen as powerful, polished, and careful, the tension around it keeps getting louder.
I realized how successful she'd been. Here was a woman who was nothing. I mean, born, broken family, the whole thing, unknown actress, all the rest of it, becomes a global star, which is what she wanted. When she was about 9 or 10, she said to her father, I want to be famous, I want to walk down the red carpet. And she has now done that. And she's calculated that she could be a great success. And by marrying Harry...
Right. Enough about Oprah. However people may feel about her, even critics online tend to see her as sharp. Meghan, according to the online read that keeps circulating, does not even have that same consistency going for her. The claim is that there is no fixed version of Meghan at all, just whatever image fits the moment. Some viewers describe her as a chameleon. When she was linked to a chef, people said she suddenly appeared as a passionate foodie. Then, once Harry entered the picture, the wardrobe changed, the perfume talk started, and half the internet began whispering that she was styling herself after a woman I can only speak of with respect, his late mother.
She had one amazing ability, which was to find a man who needed her. Oh. And she played him brilliantly. The actress was sensational.
Whoever happens to be in the room seems to be the version of Meghan that gets presented. And that is why some critics online have started saying there may not be a fixed self there at all, at least not one the public can clearly pin down. The harsher line making the rounds is that there is nothing consistent to betray, because, in their view, there was never a steady core to begin with. And the criticism does not stop at the wardrobe. The real complaint, according to that online chatter, is that Meghan does not trade in plain truth. She trades in narrative. There always seems to be another story being shaped, another version where she is the wounded heroine and someone else gets cast as the villain. One week it is a palace aide, the next it is the Princess of Wales herself. The person Meghan was apparently fine letting the public believe had reduced her to tears, until it later emerged, at least in some accounts, that the situation may have gone the other way around.
It's horrible what Meghan has done. And I just feel really sad for the monarchy at times, because I know that's what Meghan has in her sights, to do things to people like Catherine, things that came out in that book, about calling them racist. Like, she takes the most egregious thing you can say about a person.
Some critics online go even further and claim she does not really collect friends, she collects useful people, uses the opportunity, and then moves on to the next rung. Now put that claim beside what is airing on your screen this very weekend. There she is on MasterChef Australia, having flown to the literal other side of the world after apparently not landing a cooking show in America and not getting one in Britain either. And she is wandering around that kitchen saying food is her love language and that cooking is how she connects with the people closest to her. Come on. And that is why people keep circling back to this moment, because it is not just about one appearance, it is about the bigger image that keeps getting challenged online. To supporters, it is still harmless television and a simple guest spot. But to critics, It feels like another example of a carefully managed brand trying to stay warm, relatable, and effortless, even when the internet is busy questioning every detail. That gap between what is presented and what people think they are seeing is what keeps the conversation alive. Once that kind of doubt sets in, even a casual comment about cooking or connection can start sounding strategic to viewers who are already skeptical. And in this case, the reaction is not really about the kitchen at all. It is about whether the public is watching a genuine moment or another polished performance that fits whatever story is needed next.
Meghan seems like she could be on the Sarah Ferguson path.
She always looks good. She always survives. You never see a moment of weakness in public. I mean, Meghan is a consummate survival actress.
The entire internet seemed to say the same thing at the same time, and the question was basically, what exactly is nearest and dearest supposed to mean here? This is a woman whose own father, according to widely discussed reports, watched her wedding on television like everyone else, whose half-sister she has been in open court disputes with, and whose mother was reportedly left sitting almost alone in that chapel. The sharp joke making the rounds was that the rest of the family apparently were not exactly camera-ready. One of the most shared lines all week came from some poor soul who joked that if they had come downstairs as a child and found their mom had made a giant rainbow fruit platter, they would have assumed there was some kind of family tragedy. It sounds made up, but that is exactly why people kept repeating it.
What mother or father in the name of sweet Jesus has enough time to create a fruit plate at 6 o'clock on a Monday morning when there's toast throwing around the room? And her kitchen was just sterile and awful, and I hate her. I'm so sorry, I really do.
That is the reaction her cooking gets now. And this soft, nurturing, from-the-heart image? Just ask the people who once worked around her. Because palace staff, according to multiple accounts and complaints discussed online, reportedly found the atmosphere difficult, with aides said to have been left in tears. The warmth seems to show up when the cameras are rolling. Turn the angle the other way, and the stories people keep talking about are a lot colder. And the branding never really stops, does it?
Everything she touches turns to shit. And I think every sort of creative person behind her or deep pocket behind her knows it's an extraordinary risk. She's too toxic to touch.
The beautiful local Australian honey, and of course, there is even a beekeeper photo shoot tucked away in the archive. Then there is the edible flour and the sprinkles from her as-ever range, the ones some buyers said they purchased, struggled to open, and claimed tasted a bit like wet paper, honestly. And that is where the hypocrisy really starts to stand out. Just 3 months ago, her team was reportedly unhappy when a judge used the word royalty. Now the whole challenge is centered on a dish, and the show itself describes it as being fit for a duchess. Too grand for the word royalty back in April, but perfectly happy to lean into Duchess for the ratings in July. Convenient, isn't it? The audacity is hard to miss. You cannot wear the tiara and the apron at the same time, darling. Pick one. And that is exactly why the reaction keeps growing, because people are not just talking about one cooking segment, they are talking about the larger image being sold to them. Once viewers start noticing that gap, every polished detail begins to feel louder than the moment itself. A simple recipe, a soft smile, a carefully styled scene, all of it can start reading like another layer in a much bigger presentation. That is what makes the online chatter so persistent. Some viewers still see harmless lifestyle content, while others think the whole thing is built to keep the brand looking effortless, no matter what is happening behind the scenes. And when that kind of skepticism takes hold, even small choices in tone, wording, or visuals can become part of the debate. So, the real issue is not whether the kitchen looked nice, it is whether the audience believes the image being shown. And right now, that question is clearly not going away.
Journalistic integrity was absolutely shot to shit. It's the best way I can explain it. It was shocking. Even that bit, were you silent or were you silenced? For Meghan to say the latter, who silenced you? How did they silence you? Are you saying the royal family got an NDA? Did they threaten you? How could they stop you speaking? Because I tell you what, you didn't stop speaking the entire time you were in the royal family, so how is it they now managed to silence you?
And this is the part people keep circling back to. Oprah apparently heading for the exit is not being read online as some isolated betrayal. It is being talked about as just the most recognizable name in a much longer line of people who seem to be distancing themselves from Meghan Markle as quickly as they can.
If you want to keep your privacy, then don't go out. If you want to go to a restaurant and you want to have, you're having out to dinner with Stedman and Stedman was like, why people are coming up all the time, then let's stay home and eat. And so that has been my approach. Very different, though, I think, than being royalty or being even a movie star.
Angela Levin, one of the more outspoken royal biographers, has been saying for some time that Meghan and Oprah are no longer on friendly terms. Levin has also claimed Meghan was booed at an event in Montecito, the polished little town she moved to for those high-profile neighbors. That detail has been making the rounds online, and if the chatter is to be believed, the picture is not nearly as glamorous as it first looked. Now, the latest version of the story suggests some of those same neighbors are said to cross the road to avoid her.
But she's an incredibly unpleasant woman. The children don't need anything. They're little kids. They don't even know who their grandfather is, or either grandfathers, actually. And they don't need how to be royal people. So let's leave it. Let them have their own lives.
And can you really blame them? Just look at the numbers people keep pointing to. The Netflix series with Love, Meghan, which online chatter says Netflix quietly moved on from, reportedly landed at number 383 on the platform's own chart. Even reruns of her earlier legal drama outperformed it. Then the festive special was said to open at a flat 0%. Not just low, but zero. And that is why the conversation keeps getting louder, because once a public image starts looking shaky, people begin replaying every polished moment through a different lens. What used to look like effortless charm can start to seem carefully managed, and that shift alone is enough to keep online discussion moving. For critics, the real story is not one clip or one event, it is the pattern they think they are seeing. They point to the contrast between the glossy presentation and the growing wave of skepticism around it, and that contrast is what keeps the reaction so sticky. Supporters, of course, see it differently, but even that split only adds more heat to the debate. So every new comment, every quiet distance, and every awkward public moment gets folded into the same larger conversation. And once people start viewing things that way, it becomes much harder for the brand to control the narrative.
Just because you marry a prince doesn't mean you can become a lifestyle guru. She really thought in a way she could just sort of, rock up and become the new Martha Stewart. And the problem is she's inauthentic, and people have to like you to want to go into your TV kitchen or your mate's kitchen or whatever it is.
Then, somehow, the whole thing still landed a Daytime Emmy nomination, which is exactly the part that had people rolling their eyes. Even Megyn Kelly could not really keep a straight face over it. With a 38% turnout for a golden statue in a 5-name category, it is easy to see why the whispers turned into, "You can just buy one of those." And apparently, it is not just the TV side of things.
Trick that people do with pineapple, instead of just cutting it to make the perfect little bite, you follow the wedge. When nature has given you all the cues on how to have a perfect taste of something.
Oh, how fun is that? I love it.
I like working hard.
This woman is being paid millions of dollars to show how to cut into a pineapple.
Harry took a huge gamble with that court case against the Mail's publisher, and according to the ruling, all 97 of his complaints were dismissed. He later called the outcome a whitewash, then went after the judge herself, which did not exactly land well with critics online. Even a former Justice Secretary weighed in and said, in his words, that taking aim at a high court judge in that way was over the top and unacceptable.
First of all, it was an absolute resounding beating. It was thrown out, and the judge was almost annoyed that this had got as far as it had. People were perplexed. When Harry started this, when he went after the Daily Mail, this was for stories a long time ago. Talk about holding a grudge. Talk about not being able to move on. Him and Meghan present themselves as happier than ever, living in Montecito, and here's Harry, still fighting battles from decades ago. So nobody really understood why he was doing this. I know from my sources he was advised not to do this. Any reputable lawyer that he spoke to in London would tell him this is almost impossible to prove and hence to win.
And the other side's editor, according to the way people are talking about it, did not exactly hold back either. Even old friends, some viewers say, have closed their wallets. When Harry went looking for help with a funding gap, word out of the south of France was blunt: "I'm not an ATM." Meanwhile, Netflix is said to have quietly wound down her as-ever deal. Her approval ratings are being described online as close to the floor, with some posts putting them at around 20%, the lowest point of her public standing so far. And a petition telling the couple, "We don't want you here," has reportedly moved past 45,000 names. When numbers start looking like that, people online say the loyal crowd does not wait around for the ship to go under, it jumps. According to that chatter, Oprah moved first, and she did it looking polished as ever. So let's bring it back to the bigger picture. Here is the claim being pushed by critics, at least the way they frame it. They argue that the 2021 interview was never really journalism, and never really friendship either. In their view, it was a transaction between two women who know how to use access for a living, and who, for one afternoon, found each other useful. Meghan, they say, used Oprah's name to help sell her victim story. Oprah, in turn, used Meghan's royal title to land the kind of interview the actual royals were never likely to hand over. Thick as thieves, the criticism goes, right up until the money pressure started to show, and now the contrast is hard to ignore. Meghan has lost the palace, lost the press, lost the neighbors, lost the ratings, and this week she is still out there promoting fruit platters on the other side of the world. And that is what makes this so messy. Because once people decide the whole thing was carefully staged, every old clip starts looking different. The smiles, the pauses, the polished talking points, all of it gets pulled back into the same argument, and the internet is not letting that go anytime soon. Critics keep saying the fallout is not really about one interview, it is about trust, image, and how fast a carefully built story can wobble when public opinion turns. Supporters push back, of course, but even that pushback keeps the discussion alive and gives critics more material to work with. So now, what once felt like a clean media moment has become a running case study in how quickly admiration can shift into skepticism. And the louder the reaction gets, the more people online seem convinced that the old version of the story no longer holds up. And Oprah, as always, seems to be carefully editing herself out of the picture before any of the backlash reaches her, which is exactly what critics online say she has done whenever controversy starts getting too hot. If you ask who actually comes out of this messy saga with their dignity intact, the answer, at least in the way some viewers frame it, is the people these two spent years tearing down. Diana, who was smart enough to send Oprah packing all those years ago, is still being held up as the one who saw through the whole setup. Then there is the late Queen, who carried every bit of it in silence and never fired back, and the family, who took the hits, stayed composed, and kept doing the work. They did not need a rented garden or a sympathetic host. They simply carried on. No leaks, no Netflix crew, no borrowed mansion, just duty handled quietly, while these two, critics say, turned private pain into a product and sold it episode by episode. Meghan, according to that criticism, put everything on the line by leaning into the victim narrative and bringing in one of television's most powerful voices to help sell it. And the irony, as people keep pointing out, is that the same woman now seems eager to distance herself from the whole performance. Online, many are saying there is no real loyalty in that pairing, and that there never was. The only thing some critics call truly honest about that famous interview is that, in the end, two women who know how to use everybody may have ended up using each other. Make of that what you will, because they both seem to have walked away with exactly the kind of fallout they earned. So, where do you land on this one? Who used who more, Meghan or Oprah? Or are they just two of a kind, the kind of pair you would not trust with your handbag? Drop your verdict in the comments. I read every single one. Hit like, subscribe, share this with anyone following the fallout, and comment your take so we can keep this conversation going. There is plenty more coming this week, and the next chapter drops in a few days when we break down that MasterChef appearance line by line. See you on the next one.